wanted to make a video about importance of language and how it really screws up people, and that historically this has been an issue. I just saw a video of a bunch of people sitting in a mosque listening to the Quran being recited in Arabic, and I know for a fact that most of them do not have a clue what was just said. To them, they might as well be at an Arabic concert. What good is a message? What good is a guidance if you don't understand it? I could give you, you could ask me for directions, and I could write them down to you in Chinese. Are they going to take you where you need to go? So these people are sitting and they're listening to the Quran, and most of these people are just I'm not going to say most of them, some of these people are part-time, what I call part-time Muslims, what I used to be. You go to the mosque for Eid, and that's pretty much it. You may do something else, but that's what I used to be. So I know that some of those people in there are, at least in that particular community, I'm not saying for like Arabic speaking communities and stuff, but in that particular community, in my community, Bosnian community, I know for a fact that a lot of people in there don't have a clue what they're being told. They're just sitting there listening to this recitation, and then they go on with their lives. And their lives are generally, for some of these people, like for myself, are lived in disobedience to God. After the prayer service, they're going to go to a bar. They're going to celebrate this at a bar. It gets that bizarre. And I know that because I was one of those people. I used to celebrate this at a bar. This is how deep ignorance runs. I know ignorance runs that deep because I was that's how I lived. So that's why it has to be said. Somebody has to say something. We can't just all decide to be stupid collectively and then not say anything because we don't want to offend anybody. Somebody's decisions influenced my life because they decided not to say anything, not to object to all of this. I'm not saying they could have changed me, but maybe I wouldn't have been as stupid as I was, thinking that I'm actually doing something productive. When I go to eat once a year, it literally, it's a good thing to do. At least you put your foot in through the door. There may be somebody there that can help you. But just going there and praying, it does absolutely nothing to you. And then when you go there and you listen to the Quran, I understand they have a service, but a lot of times, sometimes they won't even mention the Quran in that service. They will recite the Quran in Arabic, and then the priest is going to speak something out of his own head. Sometimes they speak about the Quran, but sometimes it's even political. So the recitation of the Quran did absolutely nothing for the people. So what I heard today in Arabic that most of those people didn't understand. So part of the message was this: "O you who believe, be careful of your duty to God, and let every soul consider what it has sent for tomorrow, and be careful of your duty to God. God is surely aware of what you do. And don't be like of those who forsook God, so He made them forsake their own souls. These are those who are defiantly disobedient. The inmates of the fires and the dwellers of heaven are not the same. The dwellers of the heaven are the successful. They are the achievers. They achieve success. Had we sent down this Quran, this recitation, to a mountain, you would certainly have seen it falling down, splitting apart because of fear of God. And we sent forth these parables to you that you may reflect, that you may think about it. God says, if I send this Quran to a mountain, that is way more powerful than you, that is way bigger than you, that you can move the mountains. I don't know if you've ever been to mountains. Mountains are just amazing. We are nothing. You find yourself in the mountains and all of a sudden you see how little you are, how nothing you are. And God says, if I send it to a mountain, you would see something happen to it. The mountain would change. The mountain would change out of fear of God, out of reverence for God. It would change. If mountain receives the recitation, it changes. Something happens to it. That is what's supposed to happen to us. When you hear the Quran, when you hear it recited to you, it is supposed to change you. It is supposed to make you think. It is supposed to make you change your behavior. God says, I mean, I'm just talking about these verses because I heard them recited in the mosque. God tells us, all you who believe, be careful of your duty and consider what you have already done. Let every soul consider what it has already done. Most of us did a lot of evil stuff already. You know? And God repeats again in the same verse twice, be careful of your duty to God. You are careful of how you perform your job. You don't want to make mistakes at your job. What would make you think that how you perform at your job is more important than keeping your duty to God? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense at all. So when you're careful of your duty to God, whatever God does, you do. When God says pray, you pray. When God says don't lie, you don't lie. It's extremely simple. It's the halal and haram concept. And then God tells us, warns us. And this is what these people were listening at this masjid, at this mosque, in Arabic. None of who understood this. They didn't understand what was being told to them. Somebody was telling them something that was of no use to them. But if they would actually tell them in a language they understand, somebody may draw some lesson from it. You know, because God says that you may reflect on this. These verses, these particular verses that were recited in the mosque, you're supposed to reflect on them. You're supposed to reflect on them. Think about them. How can you think about them if you don't know what you're being told, if you don't know what they say because they're in Arabic and you don't speak Arabic? God says that don't be like those who forgot about God, who forsook God. So God made them forget about themselves, forsake themselves. These are that are defiantly disobedient. These are not people that make mistakes. This is who I was when I would go to the mosque for Eid and then go to the bar and celebrate Eid. You're defiantly disobedient. You're not just making mistakes. Your pattern of life is inconsistent with a pattern of somebody who is going to heaven. Your pattern of life is rather more consistent with somebody that's going to hell. And God says the inhabitants of heaven and the inhabitants of hell are not the same. They're not the same people. They're not different by labels that they ascribe to themselves. They are different by whether they keep their duty to God or not. Your duty to God is to obey Him. And obeying God is not doing anything bad. It's nothing archaic. It's like these basic morals that apply through time, all time. It is the inhabitants of heaven who are successful. They are the achievers. They achieve success. Everything else is failure. I don't care who you were on this earth. If you didn't achieve that, you're not successful. You're rotten in hell. There's no success there. Only success is to be careful of your duty to God and then go to heaven. It's a very simple message, a very simple warning. It's just like 4 verses, to be careful of your duty to God, to consider what you have already done, to not forsake God, not to turn away from remembrance of God. That is basically saying don't turn away from prayer. The greatest purpose of prayer that God describes in the Quran is remembrance of God. So you don't forsake God. You don't forget about God. So just that little thing, prayer, can make you fail if you don't observe prayer. God says, don't forsake God. Don't be like those who forsook God, who forgot about God. The people that came before us. Prophet Jesus, Abraham, Muhammad, all of them have had enemies. Don't be like those people, because right now you're behaving like enemies of God. You hear a law and you don't follow it. And this is where people who hear a law and they understand it, in the language they understand. So God says, don't be like those people. Now this is made worse by language issues. We recite the Quran in Arabic, and most people don't speak Arabic. If you're going to recite these verses in a mosque, in an environment where you know most people don't speak a lick of Arabic, you should then go and recite it, at least recite it, if not explain it, in a language they understand. So they understand what they are being told. You know, the Quran is actually Prophet Muhammad standing in front of his people and telling them the revelations of God. That is what the Quran is. And these people are sitting there listening, and they are understanding what he is saying. And they're like, okay, this is what we need to do. Now we know what we need to do. And then God makes us recite. So there's a verse in the Quran that talks about prayer that says, recite what has been revealed to you from your Lord and keep up prayer. So these people heard what has been revealed from God. And then they repeat that in prayer. They memorize it. They memorize it. They memorize the rules. How can you follow the rules if you don't know them? What better way to know them if you memorize them? That is why God makes you recite this stuff. That is why language is so important. You have to understand what is expected of you. Otherwise, it's all just fakeness. If you don't know what's expected of you, it's fakeness. And that is the responsibility of imams, of sheikhs, of priests. They're supposed to teach people. They're teachers. They themselves may not be perfect. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is they are supposed to be teachers. But because of the environment that they got their training in, because of the environment we all expect when you walk into a mosque, we have been afraid to question the illogical approach of reciting a message, a guidance to people in a language they don't understand. And then we are surprised why they are not behaving correctly. Christians did that too. Liturgy was in Latin, I don't know, till the Middle Ages. When people didn't speak Latin, they got Latin liturgy from church. And these people didn't have access to the Bible. It's the same thing. If you have, if you have the Quran and you don't understand it, you don't have anything. You have a bunch of words that don't mean anything. You have to understand it. You have to be able to understand it. And the people who say that you have to read it in Arabic and have somebody, explain it to you, somebody already translated this. And it's not translated perfectly every single time, but you'll get the gist of it. And even if people teach you how to read it in Arabic, you're still going to translate it. They may translate it to you. So, in effect, what they're saying is, I will translate it to you. I will tell you what it means. Don't worry about what this other guy who's actually sat down and researched it and translated it. Don't worry about him. He's not accurate. I am only accurate. Translations are perfect, but they're enough. And when God says in the Quran, we have revealed to you this book. In it, our verse is clear. They are the mother of the book. This is chapter 3, verse 7. Whatever is clear, it's easily translatable. Simple concepts that apply through culture, that apply across cultures. All cultures have good vocabulary to translate those in. Like, don't mistreat your parents. That is easily, the concept is easily translatable because every single culture on the planet deals with it. Every single culture on the planet values this. They think about it. When, you're told not to cheat in commerce, when you are told not to be arrogant, this is easily translatable. So even though the translations may not be perfect, and they're not, some are better than others, but none of them are perfect. But the basic concepts, the stuff that you don't need anybody to explain to you, because these are verses clear. You don't need a priest. You don't need anybody. When you hear these verses, they will be clear. God says that the inhabitants of hell are defiantly disobedient. You understand what that means. That means if you disobey God, your place is hell. The devil is not devil because he doesn't believe in God. The devil saw God. The devil saw God. Adam and Eve saw God. They didn't get in trouble because they disbelieved in God, because they were disbelievers. They got in trouble because they disobeyed God. That's the whole, that's what it is. That's the problem. The problem with the world, God created us with free will. So the evil in the world is not because God allows it. Why does God allow little children to starve? It's not God. God gave you free will, and some wicked people are making these children starve, and you are not going to fight for them because you are happy with your life, just like I'm comfortable in my life, and none of us are doing anything, because to stop people like that requires violence, unfortunately, and most of us are not prepared for it. Now, whatever the reason may be, until we are moved enough, until we feel it on ourselves, until we're the victims, we generally are very apathetic. We just don't care. I mean, we care, but we don't care enough to go over there and help these people. So it's not God that's doing it. It is people who have chosen to misuse their free will to make others suffer. That's why Word of God is so important for those people who at least claim a religion. At least it's a beginning. At least you get united around the same core message. And maybe, just maybe, if there's enough adherence at some point, you can actually go and do something. Actually protect the weak. So, but that's besides the point. The point here is the message itself. It has to be in a language you understand. It has to be in a language you understand. There is nobody. Bosnian community has a lot of truck drivers. If you get dispatched in Arabic, where are you going to end up? It doesn't make sense. So that's what I wanted to say. You have to understand what the message is. The traditions that we have, although we are very comfortable with them, are counterproductive. These people went to the mosque the only time, maybe some of them the only time in a year, and instead of hearing a message, they heard singing. I don't know, I didn't listen to the khutbah, so if the khutbah was good, then I'm wrong, But if the khutbah did not address these verses or some verses or some rules or something, if it did not educate people, then it was useless. You went there for no reason. You gained nothing. So some of these traditions that we hold near and dear, that we identify as the part of religion, some of these cultural factors and language itself, yes, The Quran got revealed in Arabic. Yes, for Arabs. Everybody gets the message in their own language, even if that means translating the Quran. And the message, the core message itself, cannot be messed up. What can be messed up is that people can skip over the core message because of all the other nonsense and traditions that they are propagating, including this Arabic language stuff. Everybody should learn it. If you're a Muslim, you should try. I can't learn Arabic language. I'm too old. If you're a young person and you can pick up a language, you should do it. But to venerate a language, to worship a language, is stupid. The Prophet Muhammad's job, and job of any prophet, was to go to
in
their
2
people,
miles, use the left lane.
was go to their people and explain to them clearly what is expected of them. That was their job. So they were teachers, they were preachers, and they were teachers, and they went and they explained people what was expected of them. So people can't say, oh, well, we didn't know. And you can't do that by worshiping a language. You can't do it. As optimal as it would be for everybody to speak Arabic, everybody who claims Muslim to speak Arabic, is just not feasible. It will never be feasible. So that's it. Language is extremely important. It is extremely important. You cannot get the directions. God calls Quran huda, or guidance. You cannot get guidance. You cannot get dispatched somewhere. You cannot drive somewhere. You cannot get directions somewhere. You cannot get directions to do something in a language you do not understand. It literally does nothing for you. Zero. It wastes your time. It wastes your time. It's pointless. The message itself is more important than the language. So, it is the message first that you need to learn, and then work on the language, not the other way around. So, that was the only point. That's it. Eid Mubarak, or whatever. None of these holidays mean anything unless you make them mean something, because you chose to follow a certain way. So, that's all. Good luck.